All right, little post-free agency mock draft with a special guest. It is James Foster of the 33rd team. James, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Appreciate you joining. And before we get started, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at NoFlagsFilm, and actually just started a YouTube channel. That's my most recent tweet, but it's just James Foster on YouTube.
All right, that will be in the description if you want to go subscribe to James' channel. And James, you are on the clock with the first overall pick.
So I assume we're doing what we think is going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, so I will take Cam Ward with the first pick. Seems pretty obvious ever since the last couple weeks, especially the way that they handled free agency. And I'm sure that Brian Callahan at least is thankful that they decided to go in that direction, because if they did take Abdul Carter, which it was looking like they were going to for a while, that's kind of hanging him out to dry because they don't really have much upside to improve. I think enough to save his job. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, Cam Ward has some flaws as a prospect, but there's a good chance that he ends up being a top 12 caliber quarterback. And, there's a chance that Callahan could get out of this one clean.
I'm with you. I would be pretty shocked at this point if Cam Ward's not the number one pick. Now with Cleveland here at number 2, I don't think they're done in terms of quarterback additions this offseason. I know they just brought in Kenny Pickett. That doesn't really move the needle for a lot of people, myself included. I think they're going to try another veteran route, meaning I don't think they're going to force Shedeur Sanders here. And obviously when you are in a division with the Joe Burrows, the Lamars, and especially with, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both recently getting extended, you have to be able to get after the quarterback. I think Abdul Carter is the best pass rushing prospect since Will Anderson, and I think he will go off the clock at number 2.
Do you think, because I think he's actually a better pass rushing prospect than Will Anderson. Who do you think the best pass rushing prospect, like other than Will Anderson, is in recent memory? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, so the reason why I said since Will Anderson was because over the past 5 years, dating back to 2020, for me, it goes Chase Young, Will Anderson, and then Abdul Carter. So I would go Chase, Will Anderson, and then Abdul. And then for anyone who may not remember 2021, there was Micah Parsons, who was kind of a hybrid between a linebacker and an edge. He was also 245. Yeah. He wasn't 260. Then Jalen Phillips with the forced medical retirement and everything. And then Hutch and Trayvon Walker and Kayvon back in 22. And then last year was Latu, Verse, and Turner, to refresh the memory. But I think Abdul is right behind Will out of those bunch as prospects.
Yeah, I'm with you. So number 3 for the Giants. Again, this is not personally what I would do, but it's the same kind of situation where you just we hardly ever see a coach that's this desperate for a quarterback. Teams are always desperate for a quarterback, but like Joe Shane and Brian Dable can't really afford to kick the can down the road for another year. So I'm going to take Shedeur Sanders. I would feel pretty uncomfortable spending a top 5 pick on him because I just think the physical traits limit him from being a top 10 caliber quarterback. But yeah, I do think he's also clearly the best option available.
I would agree on the physical aspect. I think for a pro comparison, he reminds me a lot of Teddy Bridgewater for good reasons and bad reasons. There's plays where he wins mentally. There's plays where he anticipates really well, but there's also plays where you see pretty quickly on tape that he's not other players at the position athleticism wise. So right. Shedeur, I mean, the Giants are they're in a pretty tough situation all around because they're just every domino that's has fell the wrong way over the past couple of years. But with the Patriots on the clock here at pick 4, I think there's a couple of choices. Tetero and McMillan confirmed ran a 4.48 at his pro day. I personally think he's been the wide receiver 1 all along. If you wanted to go Will Campbell, even Armand Mambu at 4 overall, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But this team has tried everything over the past couple of years, whether it was Brandon Ayuk, whether it was T. Higgins was rumored there for a while. I'm going to go with Tyrell McMillan, give Drake May a wide receiver one. Would not be opposed to either big offensive lineman here, but they were also rumored with Chris Godwin, and they haven't been able to get a receiver in several years. So not going to overthink it. Just give them T-Mac at number 4.
Yeah, that definitely surprised that he ran a 4.48. It'll be interesting to see. Like usually Dane tweets out like a confirmed number. I think it was an agent that posted the 4.48. But yeah, I mean honestly, his like long speed is actually kind of decent when he has like a runway to build up speed. He can really outrun people after the catch. So Jaguars at 5. I feel like this is a pretty easy pick. I'm going to go with Mason Graham. I think the Jags did a really good job in free agency of adding a lot of stopgap options at their positions of need, to where they aren't having to enter the draft with a bunch of major needs and like have to reach on players. And really the one glaring hole that they have still on the roster is defensive line. And I think Mason Graham is the best defensive tackle in this class. There's a lot of people that are worried about his arm length. That isn't a huge concern for me. I mean, from the minute that I watched him a year and a half ago, I could see that he had short arms. So that's kind of always been in my mind with Mason Graham, but he's just such a technically sound, explosive, balanced player. The one thing that did kind of bother me is weighing in at 296, which is a major step down from what he's listed at. And it's not even like he dropped weight to test well or something. So that was not ideal. But yeah, I think he's a really clean prospect overall.
I agree with the 295 part, because there was, I mean, he benched like it was something 22 reps area. Maybe he benched 28. Disregard. I'm thinking of Kenneth Grant.
24.
Okay, so 24, and the running back from Michigan, I want to say benched 23. It was like 1 or 2 reps off. There was between him and Kenneth Grant, and then the running back, they were like 1 or 2 reps off. It was not a lot. So I remember that being a little, not concerned, I guess, but a little mildly surprised, especially considering he came in 20 pounds lighter at the combine than what I thought he was going to be. So with the Raiders on the clock here, you can justify either Ashton Genty or Travis Hunter. I am going to I'm going to go with Travis Hunter, because you're in a division with obviously Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and now Bo Nix. You have to be able to stop the quarterback. And I also think Travis Hunter is I think he's a better corner prospect than I think any of the current edge rushers are available. It's not often you see Travis Hunter fall to number 6 overall. I would not be opposed to Ashton Genty, but you're upgrading the secondary in a big way. And the Raiders also have a couple of other top 100 picks. They could also select a running back in what's a pretty loaded class at either of those top 100 picks if they wanted to go that route as well.
Yeah, with how deep this running back class is, if I was a Raiders fan, I would definitely be rooting for them to address another position for sure. Jets at 7. So we've got, let's see. They could use a tackle. I think Armand Mimbo would be potentially a good option. Yeah, I'm going to go with Mimbo. He's my 3rd ranked player in this class. Really high on him. He's been my tackle 1 since like probably November. Just had incredibly clean tape this year that improved, it seemed like, every week. The way that he was playing over the second half of the year, like he was clearly the best offensive lineman in college football. And then just verifies the tape with some incredible athletic testing at 332 pounds to run a sub 5 in the 40-yard dash is pretty elite. So gonna go with Mimbo. Don't have to switch positions, and you've got 2 tackles of the future in New York.
I love the pick. I am also a big part of the Armand Membu hive. I absolutely love his game. 3 overall on the big board is spicy. I do respect the passion for Armand Membu. Now, with the Panthers up here, the biggest thing they had to do this offseason was upgrade the defense, no matter how they did it. They did that in free agency. It's not perfect by any means, but they took several steps in the right direction. Now, with the edge rushers they brought in Patrick Jones in free agency. They also addressed the defensive line by bringing in Tershawn Wharton. They also have Jadeveon Clowney, who's now in double-digit years. I'm going to go with more of a youth movement here. I like Mike Green a lot. I think Mike Green is a tremendous player, and I think he's also a tone setter. So you put him in an edge room with Jadeveon Clowney, Patrick Jones, let him learn from those guys, upgrade the defense, give Ejiro Evero even more help on the defensive side of the football, give the Panthers a fighting chance. And we all watched the Super Bowl. You need to be able to get after the quarterback. I mean, obviously everybody knew that, but it was more hammered home in the Super Bowl than what we've seen. No, then I'm trying to think of the wording here, but the point is it was hammered home in the Super Bowl, and I think everybody's going to be conscious of that. So loaded edge class, go get Mike Green at number 8.
Yeah, Mike Green's tape is awesome. The Saints are difficult to draft for every year because they don't have a lot of young building blocks that are like players of the future.
Right.
I'm probably going to go with Shamar Stewart for the Saints, who I actually feel like he's got a better chance of going in the top 5 than falling out of the top 10.
Really?
Personally, because I mean, he's just the kind of player that every defensive line coach is going to be telling their GM, like, if you give me Shamar Stewart, I can turn him into a good player. His pass rushing technique is so bad, like just really bad with his hands, doesn't, point his hips towards his opponent when he's using a bull rush. And so even though he's really powerful and really explosive, can't really walk players back into the pocket. I think that there's a lot more issues with his game than just the fact that he didn't have sacks. Like I'm not super hung up on sack production. I think he's got a ways to go, but he's also arguably the best edge athlete to enter the draft in the last decade, other than Myles Garrett. So high floor, or high ceiling, low floor.
I also think he's a Saints type player. They love those heavy-handed players. Cam Jordan's a prime example. Peyton Turner a couple years ago, Carl Granderson, Marcus Davenport, just other players that, Granderson worked out, but Davenport and Turner didn't exactly. But another edge for the Saints in the first round. I think they will go trenches. But with the Bears on the clock here, they did everything they could to address the offensive line, whether it was Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney, Drew Dahlman. I'm going to give Ben Johnson his running back of the future in Ashton Jeanty. If Ashton Jeanty falls to 10, I think the pick is sprinted in, and you would now have a future of Caleb Williams, Ashton Jeanty, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore, and even Cole Kmet. And then, of course, like we said, the offensive line. One of the more underrated players, I think, in terms of offensive linemen in the NFL, and Darnell Wright loved his tape. He's pretty violent. I in a good way. He's a monster out there. Now, everybody probably knows about the Daniil Hunter rep, but back in week 2 of last year. But I do like Darnell Wright's tape a lot. That's several great players that are in their 3rd year or younger on that offense. And Ashton Jeanty is a phenomenal football player. And Ben Johnson definitely, or at least I think Ben Johnson will prioritize the running back, would like to prioritize the running back position.
Darnell Wright's probably the player whose reputation is tarnished unfairly the most by just one single play. I see people talk about him like he's a scrub sometimes. For the 49ers, I think that, they hit on Dominic Pooney last year. That was a good find in the 3rd round. I still think they need another offensive lineman, and I'll go with Will Campbell, who could be a upgrade to Colton McKivitz, could be a future guard on the other side, but just a really, I think, high floor prospect, on the interior, I do think that to me he's pretty firmly a guard, and that's not really just because of arm length. I actually think that when it comes to playing guard versus playing tackle, foot speed is like
Agree.
5 times more important than length. And I think you also see Will Campbell struggle there. There were a lot of, I mean, he gave up like 20 pressures this year, and you go and watch them. There's a lot of bad plays on tape of him getting beat around the corner or beat inside. So yeah, I do. People get like really sensitive when you want to move a tackle into guard, and like I still really like Will Campbell. I just don't like him as much as a tackle. But a good thing for the 49ers is they have needs all over.
I was going to take Will Campbell at 12. So no Genty, no Campbell. The board did not break well for the Cowboys. But what I'm going to do here,
see if there's a first round bust that's available that you can trade the 12th pick.
Right. Former first round pick. If anybody's seen those,
Treylon Burks is available.
He is pick. Let's see what pick 247 for Treylon Burks at this point, or swap, if you will. So a swap for Treylon Burks. But anyway, there's a tweet that's been going around. It's if there's any time that if there's a tweet with a former first round pick involved, that they are not a good player. And for reference, over the past couple of weeks, who was a couple? Garrett Bradbury was one. Kenny Pickett was one. Treylon Burks, like you just said, would certainly apply. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right. Peyton Turner, former first-round picks that have been on the move.
There's a similar kind of dynamic with the draft, especially when you're talking about late-round prospects, where if like the first thing you say about someone is you're describing them as a former 5-star recruit, it's like, okay, they're turbo.
Right. So all of this to say for the Cowboys here, I think I'm going to go edge. No. You know what? I'm going to talk myself. We're going all in with Dak, CD. We're giving CD a wide receiver too. We're going based on the 2023 tape that he's going to bounce back. We're giving them a wide receiver too. We're trying to sell tickets in Dallas, get back to the NFC Championship game for the first time. We're going with Luther Burden. That's definitely an off-the-cuff pick. The first time I've made that for the Cowboys all draft season. We're betting on the upside. We're going Luther Burden, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott as a trio, if you will.
I love the pick personally. Yeah, I'm still on the Luther Burden wide receiver 1 train. I actually thought that even though he was less productive this year, I thought he improved on tape in a lot of areas. One thing I heard Daniel Jeremiah say that there were like football character concerns with him, which is why he's kind of lower on some of the insiders boards, which would make sense because I thought his tape was still pretty solid. Dolphins at 13 always need offensive line.
They do. You sniped me once, don't snipe me again, because my pick at 14 is sprinting. I already have it sprinted in. It's going to be pretty. It's pretty clear who it is, but at least Colts fans know who it would be.
Right. Yeah, I think I've got an idea. I'm going to go with Nick Emanwari.
Okay, I like that pick. I'm a big Emanwari guy. So break him down.
I think that they're going to have his 40-yard dash sitting up there on the card, but that wasn't a surprise to anybody that's watched his tape. He's a freak athlete. Speaking of football character, he's also apparently just an A+ like person in the locker room as far as work ethic and all that stuff. And there were a couple bad plays of him diagnosing the run where he was late to trigger and caused him to lose an angle. But I think in coverage, he's incredibly smart and instinctive. I don't think this is just a combine warrior who he is a late riser for some people, but to me, he's been a top 32 player for months based on his tape. So it's not hard to imagine him going this early for me, at least.
And you also have to think about the quarterbacks in that division. Justin Fields, Drake May. There's a solid quarterback in Buffalo, some would say. So you got to think of, and I mentioned those.
I've heard he's good.
Yes, I've mentioned those quarterbacks in that order specifically, by the way. But anyway, with the Colts on the clock, and even if the Dolphins were to ever get past the wild card round and make noise, I mean, you still have the rest of the conference. So I'm never going to dismiss a secondary pick unless it's just a poor value selection for an AFC team. But with the Colts on the clock, it's a now or never year for Anthony Richardson. I just want to get him a big weapon that's also, to me, a top 7 talent in this class, really top 7 at worst. Tyler Warren is a good football player. He has hands. He's a good blocker. He's kind of like a light Rob Gronkowski, if you will, in terms of impact. I mean, he had a 17 reception game against USC. The one touchdown he had against USC was ridiculous. He started out as center, then worked his way up the field and basically mossed the guy for a touchdown. Tyler Warren is, I'm not going to use the generational word, but he's a very, very good tight end prospect. And he's much better than the 14th player on the board. It also fits a need in the worst way for the Colts. And if Anthony Richardson cannot hit Tyler Warren, they have bigger problems than that. So Tyler Warren's the pick here.
Yep, that's one of those like free space picks, I feel like, in a mock draft. The Falcons. So I'm going to go with Jalen Walker out of Georgia here. To me, there's a different edge that I would take, but it seems like Jalen Walker and Jahdae Barron seem to be the two players that the NFL is a lot higher. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but higher on than me. To me, Jalen Walker is more of somebody taking the late 20s to 30s just because he's undersized, sawed off, has some flashes as a pass rusher, but not fully developed in that area. And then I don't really think the linebacker tape was anything that I'm valuing in the draft personally. So I think he's maybe not as clean as a prospect, compared to how some people view him. But I do think that that he would be the next edge off the board in the NFL's eyes.
I am going to be honest. I'm not a big Jalen Walker guy. I'm lower. I'm not the biggest fan of him at edge. I don't think the tool bag is all that there. A couple of his sacks this year, if you want to go to sack production, one was on a play where Quinn Ewers dropped back 12 yards and he barely got him. And it was on a play that 90% of the time or more is not going to happen in the NFL. And another was on a play where he was in a spy role as a linebacker, and the time to throw was like 5.9 seconds. I'm not a huge Jalen Walker guy. I think
a lot of his production was pursuit stuff.
Right. I think there's a lot better edges available, but I also think it is fair to say the NFL is higher based on DJ and Dane Brugler's, based on where they've had them in mock drafts, and they are obviously very, very plugged in. With the Cardinals in the clock, though, I want to say that I really love what they're doing just in terms of building the defensive line, because what I don't think is talked about enough is obviously Jonathan Gannon was the Eagles defensive coordinator a couple years ago. They came very close to winning the Super Bowl. They had a plethora of pass rushers, and now they have Josh Sweat. Love that signing, by the way. But BJ Ojolari's coming off of an injury. Hopefully he'll play a full year. You have Darius Robinson that you selected in the first round last year. And I'm going to go with the effective completion of the first or of the defensive line this year. And I'm going to have Kenneth Grant, Darius Robinson, Josh Sweat, and BJ Ojolari as a defensive line to be able to try and get after the quarterback. And Kenneth Grant's not necessarily him get after the quarterback, but him just to be able to stop the run and not have anybody get by him. Although there is some pass rushing upside there with Kenneth Grant, obviously, if he's being selected at number 16 overall. But complete the defensive line and dominate the trenches the way the Eagles did this past year. And I think that is their long-term game plan.
Yeah. So I just wrote a mock draft for the 33rd team. And originally I sent Kenneth Grant to Arizona, but then that really screwed up my plans for the Bengals, and it threw off like the rest of the next 5 picks. So I ended up kind of cheating and having the Cardinals pass on Kenneth Grant to make it easier for myself. But now I get to try to figure this out for the Bengals.
You want to give him another receiver?
I might consider going with an edge rusher here because I think Walter Nolan is a risk for multiple reasons. Derek Harmon, I think is solid. I mean, I have him 32 on my board. I don't see like 17th overall pick flashes. So, and then as far as interior offensive line, which I think is their biggest need, there's a lot of great guards in this class, and I don't know that the value is there necessarily. So I'm going to go with Donovan Izaraku out of Boston College. I think that I'm a lot higher on him than most people, but I mean, you've got somebody that led the Power Four in sacks last year. He has, I think, the best bend in this class, and he proved that with the only sub 7.3 cone among edge rushers at the combine. He has a really effective pass rushing plan with probably the best cross chop in college football. Really good inside counter. Only hang up that I have with him is that he doesn't win with power very effectively. So that's kind of what's holding him back from being, honestly, a blue chip prospect if he had a better speed to power.
I'm a big Izaraku guy as well. I had him in an underrated players video a couple weeks ago. I think his tape is phenomenal and love the pick here. Now, with Seattle on the clock, we have to address the interior offensive line. At least I would like to. And I'm going to draft Kelvin Banks here from Texas. I like Kelvin Banks a lot. And he played left tackle for Texas last year, but I think he can kick in. I think he's a really sturdy anchor that would be fine on the interior. But I also am drafting Kelvin Banks as an emergency plan to go to right tackle if Abraham Lucas doesn't work out. So we're drafting him with the intention of starting him at either interior offensive line position or either guard rather. But in the worst case, hell or high water, we can kick him out to right tackle if we need to. So Kelvin Banks, I think he's a great football player, really high floor in the NFL, and that is the 18th pick in today's mock.
I love that pick. So my pick for the Bucs. This is somebody that honestly, it's a shame, a travesty that he's still on the board right now because he's a top 10 player in the class.
Oh, yeah.
But that's Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. And he fills their need at linebacker, but if they want to get creative, I think he could also fill their need at edge because he fits the physical prototype for both of those positions. He's just an insane athlete. He tested really well, but his next gen stats, tracking data and stuff was incredible. They have like the shuffle sprint drill, which is one of the more translatable ones for linebackers. And he had the highest max speed in combine history from the next gen stats era, at least in that drill. And like, I was looking at some of the data, 90th percentile on a bunch of the other tracking stuff, but also like really smart in coverage. He's got a pass rushing skill set, just needs to improve his instincts in the run game a little bit, but I think such a promising player with some positional versatility.
I agree. And I'll be honest, this is kind of one of my spicier takes of the draft season, if you will. I like Campbell's future if he were to mix in edge rushing snaps more than I like Jalen Walker. I think Campbell is a much better athlete. I think he is a better football player. And I am a big Jahad Campbell fan. So love the pick there and love the landing spot as well. So with Denver on the clock, I would love to draft Will Johnson, but it's not really a need. I think you could definitely talk yourself into that. But I know obviously their secondary is phenomenal, or at least the corner play is. But I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka. I think he's just definition of a steady Eddie at the receiver position. He is a really solid football player, good route runner, good hands. If you go search in YouTube Emeka Egbuka highlights, you watch the first 20 seconds, that's the player you're going to get. He's steady. He's I would say one of the higher floor players in this class relative to his position. I think he has a limited ceiling, but I think on any year, assuming the targets are there, you could pencil in Egbuka for anywhere from 850 to 1,200 yards for the next several years of his career. And it also helps Bo Nix get another weapon, which the Broncos desperately need.
Yeah, he's got a very narrow range of outcomes, and most of them are being a good, like, quality player. The Steelers, so they drafted or they signed Darius Slay. That's kind of more of a short-term option. So I'm still probably looking at a cornerback that can be a long-term starter next to or opposite from Joey Porter Jr. And I'll go Jahdae Barron here. I don't really see him as an outside corner. The 40 time that he ran was great, but like, he doesn't have that speed on tape. So I worry about him on the outside, but the Steelers may disagree. And for the time being, they can play him in the nickel. Also has versatility to play safety. And he's another player where everything that you hear the insiders talk about with him is that he has great character. And for DB, it seems like there's one of those guys every year. It was Trent McDuffie, and then it was
Brian Branch.
Mike Sainristil,
Okay.
Brian Branch. It's like, if you got somebody that's really solid on tape, but maybe not spectacular, not that would describe those other players, but like Daniel Jeremiah and Dane Brugler are saying that like every coach is obsessed with him. It's like, okay, maybe he is just going to be a good player.
I'm surprised you didn't take Will Johnson there, to be honest. But the Chargers are.
I'm not really a fan. Honestly.
Really? Oh, we'll talk to that. We'll talk about that in a second. Because there's a couple teams that need corners coming up. But anyway, the Chargers are up. I've had this thought process for a while that Jim Harbaugh didn't address the tight end position, at least not as much last offseason, knowing that Colston Loveland was going to come out this year and knowing that there was a chance that they would get him. And not that this was like his plan specifically all along. Hey, let's, but you get the point. It was in the back of his head. I'll leave it at that. Colston Loveland did not have good quarterback play in 2024. That was evident. It was a pretty frustrating year for him. He did have pretty good quarterback play in 2023 when he had, national champion quarterback J.J. McCarthy, number 10 overall pick in the 2024 draft. No big deal. Throwing him the football. So I like Colston Loveland a lot, and you give him a good quarterback with Justin Herbert, fills a need. He's a good football player. Good Michigan guy. Jim Harbaugh would definitely love him. And it also fills a need. Ladd McConkey, Colston Loveland. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, that's a pretty exciting group of receivers for Justin Herbert. The Packers, Matthew Golden potentially, but I think that gives you like another wide receiver too. I'm going to go with Michael Williams out of Georgia, who I expect the NFL to be higher on than a lot of people. I talked to actually like multiple outside linebackers coaches at the Combine who had Michael Williams as their second ranked edge defender behind Abdul Carter. And like both times I brought up Shamar Stewart as kind of in that mix, and they gave me a crazy look. Like they're not even similar caliber players, which was surprising to me. But yeah, Michael Williams, I think he's got the size profile. I think he's a better athlete than he looked like on tape because of his ankle injury. But I think not as great of an athlete as Shamar Stewart, but a more polished player. Even for being a raw pass rusher, I still think he's a step ahead of Shamar Stewart in terms of hand usage, and kind of fits the profile that the Packers look for at that position.
I also like Michael Williams, and fits a need. The Packers definitely need, whether it's edge or corner help. I mean, we know how much Goot loves the trenches in the first round, so like the pick. The Vikings are on the clock. There's a lot of good options here. I like Gray Zabel a lot. I like Darius Alexander quite a bit. I like Walter Nolan quite a bit. But Will Johnson, in my times doing mock drafts, has never been available for the Vikings. They just brought back Byron Murphy. They're going to have Mekhi Blackman, who's coming off of a torn ACL from he was a rookie back in 2023. You can never have enough corners, especially in this division. I mean, you're in a division with Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams. I'm going Will Johnson.
Yeah, I would have gone with a corner for sure, whether it's Johnson or somebody else. I think it'll be interesting. I'm expecting that how he's viewed by the NFL is going to be pretty dependent on his 40 time, but I think on tape the speed concerns are kind of valid. But he seems like the kind of player that's gonna lead the NFL in interceptions and also lead the NFL in yards allowed. So yeah, kind of I view him as like a volatile player, a little bit too much of a gambler for my taste. Texans at 25.
There's a player staring you in the face. Depending how you feel about the injury. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I love Josh Simmons' tape.
Me too.
I was listening to Todd McShay's podcast last night, and he said that NFL teams are like really concerned about if he takes football seriously. So I'm wondering if like that's not going to affect my grade or anything because it's secondhand stuff, but I'm wondering if the NFL is maybe
down on him,
maybe lower on him. The problem is,
That's the first I'm hearing. If that would be true, that would be huge.
Yeah,
in a bad way. In a bad way, obviously.
Yeah, I talked to one team at the combine that I didn't get any details, but they had like a red flag on him. So I'll actually go with Josh Connerly Jr. out of Oregon. I think is as a player like a clear step down from Josh Simmons, but I really like his foot speed, physical profile, really good run blocker. I thought took a major step forward this year in pass pro. Had one of the best one-on-one performances against Abdul Carter. And, even though I think he's a step down, I still think they're in kind of the same tier as prospects.
Did you see him at the Senior Bowl against Mike Green?
Oh, yeah, it was bad.
No, I knew that was anyway. Look, the Rams are on the clock. They were being counted out heading into 2023. Stafford's getting old. Aaron Donald's getting old. They had a phenomenal draft. They had another great draft in 2024, and it was due in large part to addressing the trenches. I fully understand and acknowledge everything you just said about Josh Simmons, but I mean, I think the Rams, if he's available for them at 26, I think they would sprint the ticket in, assuming that neither Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren's going to be long gone by that time. He's going to be probably in the air, headed to whichever city he's going to, but by that point from the draft. But Josh Simmons is to me a top 15 talent in this class pretty easily when healthy. So you get him at 26, continue to address the trenches, and go from there.
I like it. The Ravens. So biggest need is somebody to replace Falele. I'm trying to think. I don't really think that Tyler Booker. The problem with Tyler Booker is I really like him and I like him in pass pro. There's just certain teams where I think that he would kind of be off the board as far as not being a fit for their run scheme. I think he would he'd fit the Ravens in certain aspects. They just can't pull him.
The athleticism is a big limitation.
Which is why like him getting mocked to the Dolphins never made any sense to me.
My personal thoughts here with the Ravens is Odafe Oweh entering his final year of his deal. The Ravens fans especially know that they are prime for guys having big years in the final year of their deals, whether it goes all the way back to Paul Kruger or Zadarius Smith or any of the guys that have had those big years over the past, decade plus. And there's a couple that I'm forgetting within that, but if James Pierce is here, I think that's the direction they would go.
Yeah, I'm with you. One of my comps for James Pierce is Odafe Owe, so somebody that can step in and replace him when he gets 14 sacks and 80 pressures this year.
Is that the pick then, James Pierce?
Yeah, James Pierce.
All right. Detroit's on the clock. They are an all-around elite football team. They don't have a lot of holes. Wide receivers a need here on the screen. I don't think wide receivers a need with Amon-Ra and J-Mo. You can convince me of a lot of directions here, but ultimately where I'm going to go here is edge. And the nice thing about this class is you have you can have like there's so many different flavors of edges, if you will. And you can have your bigger guy in Nick Scorton, who kind of plays lighter despite him being, he came in at 257, but he had a bit of a down year in 24 at Texas A&M relative to the player he was in 23. Landon Jackson is ginormous. Princely Monmielen reminds me a lot of Zadarius Smith. Braden Swinson is, he reminds me of Hassan Reddick, just to give you guys some comparisons as to who these guys remind me of. I'm actually a little higher on Braden Swinson than the mid-second round as PFF has here. I'd probably say early second round for me for Braden Swinson. I like his game a lot. But with the Lions on the clock here, I'm ultimately going to go with Nick Scorton. I want to have Nick Scorton immediately in a Robin role to Aiden Hutchinson's Batman. He and any other edge that would be drafted here at pick 28 would be in an immediate position to succeed, because not only do you have Aiden Hutchinson on the other side, you also have a Lee McNeil who will eventually come back. He had a torn ACL this year. And the secondary, I expect to be, healthier, it's going to be better. You're going to have DJ Reed, which was a great free agent signing by the Lions. Then you're going to have Ennis Rakestraw. You're going to have Terrion Arnold, both in year 2. So it's a good situation for Scorton to thrive in. And I think the 2023 player will come back as we enter the 2025 season. I like Scorton's game quite a bit.
Yeah, Scorton is a player that I could definitely see myself being wrong on, because I loved him heading into the year and absolutely hated his tape this year, but was clearly playing at a heavier weight than he was at the combine. And so I have a really low grade on Scorton, like probably lower than anyone, but if it turns out that he just had extra weight for Texas A&M's like defense, then I could pretty easily be wrong there. For the Commanders, I'm going to go with Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle out of Oregon. Just a really solid player who is, big, explosive 3-tech, a lot more disruptive than productive, because he is an awful finisher. And there was, in both phases, just so much production left on the field. But once again, the Commanders are going to spend a first-round pick on a defensive tackle.
I would love in this situation, if the board plays out like this, I'd love for Washington to go with, just go all in. I'd like them to go with a Marion Hampton if the board broke out like this. But with Buffalo on the clock here, look, we need. I'm just going to be honest. I think Buffalo's, barring injuries that we can't predict, I think Buffalo's going to win the AFC East by multiple games, 2, 3, 4. At least 2 games this year. I think they are. It's not a surprise, but they're one of the best teams in the NFL, and they're a lot better than the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Jets, where they are right now. And with Buffalo, I think you have to head into every offseason. Okay, how do we beat Baltimore? How do we beat Kansas City? Because those 3 teams right now, and then we'll see with the Bengals with their defense and how they approach everything. But it really comes down to, okay, we're going to play somebody in the wild card round, whether it's the Steelers, whether it's the Broncos. We're going to beat them, and then our season really begins, is kind of how the last couple of years have played out for Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to stop the run up front. And I like Tyleik Williams a lot. I think he would be a player that Buffalo desperately needs. And he is a good football player. And he also has some pass rush, like he provides a little, not too much, but it's a player that Buffalo needs. And you draft a number 30 overall. They're in a position where they can trade up to early round 2 if they need to if they need to go get somebody else, whatever position they would need. They have a lot of draft capital from the Stephon Diggs trade last year, so Buffalo's in a good position this draft. Even if they would trade up in the first round to go get a player they really like maybe a Kenneth Grant, if he were to fall a little bit, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So Tyreek Williams is going to Buffalo in today's mock.
I watched every Tyreek Williams snap from this year, and I could have missed a play, but I didn't see him ever get put on the ground. So I think that's a great pick. The Chiefs at 31, unfortunately, I threw a wrench into the system by taking Josh Connerly, who's the other free space pick, it seems like. And I just think that I think every other tackle would just be a major reach at this point. So they're going to have to ride with Jalen Moore. You could look at guard still because they obviously lost Joe Tooney, and you're going to need a good left guard to help offset what's probably not going to be great tackle play. What if we went with I'm going to do that. I'm going to go with Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. Maybe he gets to camp and it turns out that he actually is a tackle. Played great when he had to move out to the left side, but I still think that he is a guard in the NFL, but just an elite physical profile, really good play strength, and gives them a replacement for Joe Tooney.
All right. I am not going to lie. I think I would have went Walter Nolan just for the ultimate, hey, let's just have Chris Jones mentor Walter Nolan, and just that way we have the backup. But the Chiefs are also in a good position where they can trade up. They have the L'Jarius Sneed pick at the top, or the pick 66, so they have two picks they can trade up. So the Buffalo and Kansas City both in really great positions. And I forgot to add with the Tyreek Williams part, I think he is kind of like a human fire hydrant, and I mean that in the best way possible. He's just a bull. But anyway, Philadelphia's on the clock. Board is really their needs are really weird. Wide receiver to me is not a team need for them. But
yeah, I always see that for them. That doesn't make sense to me.
Especially with how much they run the ball with not only Saquon, but Jalen Hurts as well. I think they're in a prime position to take a big swing on a very high upside player. You drafted Quinyon Mitchell last year. You drafted Cooper DeJean last year. I love the idea of them going for the high home run upside and taking Savone Ravel from East Carolina. So that is the 32nd pick in today's mock. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and big thank you to James for joining the channel. James, again, plug the content. Go ahead.
Yeah. Twitter X No Flags Film, and on YouTube just James Foster.
All right. Well, big thank you to James for joining today's mock, and please like and subscribe if you guys have not already. And as always, until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.